Welcome back, listeners, and I just wanted to mention a few things before the podcast. On March 18th and 19th, we'll be having our second art show at the Dirty Water Distillery on Water Street in Plymouth. If you're interested in submitting a piece, just follow our Facebook page. There'll be information posted when the time comes. And if you're interested in coming to the art show, again, it'll be on the 18th and 19th. It'll run from 12 to 5. You'll be able to cast votes for People's Choice. There'll be trophies given away and some ribbons and some prize money, and you'll be able to get to check out some cool art and taste some excellent booze. Come down to the Dirty Water Distillery and check out our second biannual art show. All right, welcome back, listeners. We are back here at the Craft Beer Cellar in Plymouth, Mass. on Main Street as usual. And we're not going to plug it too much today because I'm sure we'll do that throughout the podcast because we're here with Tatum, proud owner of the Craft Beer Cellar.
Hi there.
And who lets us use her basement all the time. Sorry. And so, Tatum, what led you to the Craft Beer Cellar?
Beer? No.
Can you be more specific?
I always loved the idea of craft beer, even before craft beer was, like, really a thing, when it was, like, Bass and Killian's. I was that one person showing up at the college parties with, like, don't touch my 4-pack, I paid $12 for it. So I've always just been fascinated with the taste, but then it was learning the history, how beers are made. It was, like, every time I found something, I wanted to learn something more. Mm-hmm. So it was really just falling in love with that. In my previous career, I worked in human services, and I started a side company doing promotions, tastings, and events for craft breweries.
Oh, I see. So you would kind of, like, take the craft beer out and do tastings?
Yeah. So
liquor stores and whatnot?
Yeah, for smaller breweries who didn't really have a market rep in the area.
Yep.
You know, I was able to offer to them, like, you can't afford a full-time marketing person, but I can charge you X, Y, and Z. I know my beer. Let me go out and help represent your brand and get it into people's hands.
Oh, nice.
So I did that. We started with one brewery, which is a funny story how we started. I never really intended to have a tasting company. It wasn't like I woke up one morning and was like, I'm going to start a tasting company.
There was no eureka!
No, I went to a beer fest and I asked the woman working the booth what the hop profile was, and she said, ha ha! So I called the brewery on a Monday and was like, listen, just so you know, you can't send her out anymore. Like, they shouldn't have the basic knowledge. It's like, I just wanted to know what hop was in it. And they said, great, you're hired. Do you want to work for us? And I said, no, I'm a director of nursing. Like, no, I don't want to work for a beer company. And they said, well, it's just the weekends and we'll pay you in beer and we'll pay you in cash. So, okay.
Well, how much beer?
Right. Turns out, more than you could probably consume. That's a funny story. I
feel like that's a challenge.
Perhaps like an illegal warehouse. I'm not really sure what the capacity of you're supposed to have personally, but they would just keep sending like cases and cases of beer. Oh. So I started with that one company, like kind of, this is a fun thing to do. And I ended up with 35 after about a year and a half and really making a business. Hired 7 people part-time to do events.
Wow. Do you still run that?
No.
That's kind of...
Yeah, I had to make a choice. Yeah. You know, it was something that definitely led me to more passion of the craft beer industry, the more people I met. But there was no way I could manage being here and giving this 100% attention, as well as being, doing events down on the Cape, etc.
Right. And so for anybody who hasn't made it to the beer cellar, there are other locations that are...
There's 30 now.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
So what is the general mission statement? Like what specifically separates Craft Beer Cellar from a liquor store?
Great beer, great hospitality, and great education. We want our consumers to come in and know that they're part of what's going on here. We know their names. We know their kids' names. We're going to carry things out to cars. If we can't get something to them and they're having a party, I'll drive it to their house. It's the education piece. We run classes pretty consistently throughout the month.
Like a Beer 101, right?
Yeah, we have Beer 101 coming up. We also are working with a pretty local, popular brewery on a sour class coming up. We have a beer and oyster pairing class in February.
Which seems like it's going to be very...
Yeah, that's sold out very quickly.
Sold out, yeah.
So we're really just always looking about the education piece. It's one thing to go into a massive store and see stacks and stacks of beer. It's another to pull someone aside. We just had a customer literally 10 minutes ago saying, I'm having pork tonight with a demi-glaze. What beer goes with that? I mean, I can guarantee you, I'm not a betting person, but if I gave you $100 and you walked into a mega chain store and tracked somebody down and asked them whether your demi-glazed pork, what would go good with that in the beer section, they might struggle a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I've asked people at different events and things, and you can tell the difference between someone who really knows what they're talking about and someone who's just standing behind the table and knows like two things.
Right.
Like I know two keywords.
Yeah, I know these two words.
Yes.
I have to use these two words.
Yeah. So you've been in Plymouth. I was gonna guess, but I don't really know. How long have you been here?
March will be 2 years that we've been open.
Okay. And what has been the general response from the people here in Plymouth?
Oh, are you kidding? This is the best town ever.
Yeah.
It's just such a cool town. We had looked at other places. We looked at the Cape. There were no liquor licenses available, and it was a blessing. The closest liquor license available was here in Plymouth. In this community, wouldn't trade it, couldn't ask for better. Between all the bars and restaurants that are supportive, you know, even our local selectmen, I mean, they're awesome. Everybody at Town Hall. You know, I went to go drop off some paperwork the other day. Somebody wanted to high-five me for having a great beer store.
Yeah.
And it's across the board, so supportive.
And that's one of the great things that I've noticed being here a few years is, I know I've said it before, but how well everyone works together. And you'd think that they would have every reason not to work together. It's like every restaurant owner down Main Street seems to be
everyone's
buddies and friends and drinking each other, and you'd think that it would be the complete opposite.
It generally is, and it's interesting to see, like, we know we have something special.
Yeah.
I went to an event in Boston 2 months ago, and the owner of a brewery from Connecticut was like, "You're from Plymouth. I've heard about that town. Do your bar owners really get along?" It's a unique...
And it's like beyond get along, because I mean, there's an amount... Like some places where, you know, there's a working relationship, you know, where we have to coexist, but this isn't that. It's
oh no,
you're having an event. Oh, that's awesome. I'll tell people,
right?
You know, and you're like, that shouldn't work, but it does.
It was really cool to kind of see that in action. I think it was last week. There was a brewery that came in that started at BBC, ended at Speedwell for an event, and a big banner with both the logos on it. Both of the, you know, the bar and the restaurant had advertised together on Facebook. Yeah. You just don't see that, you know, and I don't know that people get the gravity when we shared that, saying, how cool is it that these two Plymouth, you know, restaurant and a bar next to each other are doing an event together, promoting each other, advertising for each other. It's just the coolest thing.
Yeah, and it's so great, and everyone's been so gracious to us to you know, let us in and do stuff in their locations, and it's been a pleasure. And personally, thank you, Tatum, because you asked us specifically to use the classroom, which our response was, "There's a classroom."
And new carpet in the classroom.
It's gorgeous. It's very nice. So, what is trending in beer now? Like,
it's interesting.
Please tell me the IPAs are going away.
You know, they're never going to go away. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm sorry.
They don't have to go away.
They're going to be here. I mean, they're a thing.
Yeah,
it's a thing.
I get it's a thing.
There are definitely more and more people coming in saying they want less hoppy and lower alcohol. We're definitely seeing a draw for lower alcohol beer.
Really?
Yeah.
That's weird. That's not something that I would expect people to...
you know, if you think about it, at some point, we're going to assume most people have to be responsible adults.
Right, yeah.
So, if you have one beer that's 9%, or 3 beers that are 4%,
sure.
Or, you know what I mean?
And I think everyone who's a craft beer fan has had that moment of drinking where it becomes, oh shit, I've only had 2 and I'm hammered.
Exactly.
If you're not really paying attention, it can become a problem.
Yes. So we definitely have people who are a little more conscious of. I had a guy in yesterday. He's like, all right, I have to buy 4 beers that I know are going to get me through the chores I have to do, and 2 to reward myself afterwards. You know?
Yeah.
there's been a movement to that. And interestingly enough, I was caught off guard. People are still asking for fruit beer. This time of year, I don't generally carry a lot of fruit beer because it's January. And
that seems like a summer thing.
Right, yeah. People are definitely asking for more fruited beer year-round. In every style, not just the IPA.
Yeah. What is your personal preference?
Well, my personal preference...
This is going to be one of those, I love all my children.
I do love all my children, you know that. No, Oyster Stout is actually my favorite style.
You recommended that to me one time. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, it's two of my favorite things in the world, like in a glass.
Is that going to be part of your oyster pairing?
Yes, we will have an Oyster Stout.
And that's Flying Dog Brewery, right? That does
I'm not sure if we're going to use Flying... We may use Flying Dog.
Yeah.
There's a few on the market right now. Not a ton of breweries are killing oyster stouts.
Yeah.
Flying Dog's one of them. 21st Amendment does one. And just locally, Devil's Purse does a great, really nice oyster stout.
Where's Devil's Purse?
They're in Dennis.
I've never even heard of them.
Oh, those guys rock.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're awesome.
So, well, that's a good kind of thing. Like, what is a good, little-known brewery? Like, what's
it's
kind
funny,
of like a hidden treasure?
In this little beer community, I don't know that anything's little known. I think that it's more big breweries making good beer that people overlook.
Yeah.
Because every single little brewery, that's the hot spot. Because they feel like nobody knows it, so we're all going to go there.
So everyone's looking for those.
There are definitely some well-established breweries that people are overlooking their beer.
So what's your favorite Budweiser?
Oh, yeah.
So
Water.
What's a good overlooked, kind of mass-produced?
I think in your larger scale of craft beer, anything that Stone's putting out is fantastic. Lagunitas, Sierra Nevada. I don't know if you saw my Facebook rant the other day about people are looking at these breweries who have been established and seeing new styles and then saying, oh, they just want to be relevant, so I'm not going to buy them. Well, all of our job is to stay relevant.
Right, yeah.
Right. I mean, in that existence in life.
Right. Like, why would you be like, relevant? No, we're just going to fade into the distance.
Yeah, so some people will definitely say, like, oh, Sierra Nevada, I've already had that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to drink that. They were so 10 years ago. Well, you're missing out on some really great beer.
And what are they doing now?
They have a tropical IPA that they just did that was fantastic. Same thing with Stone. They just put one out. It's called Mega Wheat. It's a collaboration. A double IPA. So just some cool things going on in terms of don't discount the old dog in the race.
Yeah.
Like that dog started the race.
So you are not only a beer lover, but also a dog lover.
Yes, I am.
I talked about dogs in the race. This is probably the only business I can think of that has a water bowl out if you bring your dog. There are usually milk bones at the register.
Dog cookies.
And I'd say about half the time I come in, Cooper's here.
Yeah, and, he kind of pouts when he can't come into work.
Yeah. So. Now, you've also done fundraisers for some pet thing.
Yeah, Friends of the Animal. Well, we've done a few. Friends of the Plymouth Pound.
Yeah.
We generally do a few times during the year.
Mm-hmm.
We also did one. There was some flooding, and I can't remember what state at the time, but we did a supplies fundraiser, and it was unbelievable. We had 3 truckloads of things coming in for
specifically
donation.
for pets.
Yep.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And you also did
we did the pet pictures with Santa.
You did that?
Yeah, Santa Claus was here.
And, when did you do that? Because I took the dogs...
A weekend after Thanksgiving.
Oh, see, I made up my mind too late.
Yeah,
I decided to do that super late, so I went to,
we
like,
had
PetSmart.
75 dogs within 2 hours in here.
Wow.
Here's a fun fact.
Did you have a really good Santa?
We did.
Okay.
We have never broken a bottle with all the dogs we've had in here.
Really? Have the humans broken bottles in here?
The staff have, yes. Yeah. Not the customers,
yeah.
No.
Oh, man, I'm going to have to do that next year. Because luckily, after I decided to do it, PetSmart was doing the pictures with Santa.
Oh, yeah.
But wasn't a very good Santa. It was very last minute.
Sometimes Santa's grouchy. Our Santa, sometimes he needs a little beer sample to get him through.
Okay. Well, that's fine.
Yeah. We had a cat come.
Really?
Yeah.
With 75 dogs?
Yeah.
And that went okay?
It did.
Yeah.
I think that it might have been roofied, but whatever.
Yeah. I was actually very proud of my dogs. One of them is a little territorial, but she behaved very well.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, so we do that. That was our second year.
Nice.
Yeah, we've at one time we had 50 dogs in here at one time, and 3 of those were Great Danes.
Jesus. That's not that big of a store.
It's not. It's really not.
I feel like 1 Great Dane would be too much.
So, no, we really try to tie into the community. It comes from my background of human services. Mm-hmm. You can't be in the community and ask the community to support you, and you don't support them back.
Yeah. And back in around Christmas, you did a gift wrapping.
Oh, yeah, for the Boys and Girls Club.
Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah.
And we happened to be here. I forget exactly why. But I think that might have been someone's opening. Benjamin Loves Santa.
Oh, yes.
And that was a really good turnout, and people were finding spots on the floor to wrap. And
yeah, it gets a little chaotic, but we get it done. I think that we raised just under a little bit of $1,000 both years that we've done it for the Boys and Girls Club locally.
Yeah, and that was you just bring your presents, make a donation, and you wrap them.
Yeah, we'll wrap them. You drink some beer samples, have some food that's donated from the different restaurants.
Yeah.
Hang out, talk to your friends. We'll wrap your presents. And the money that goes, it's an interesting, again, part of the human services. The money we raise goes towards the teenagers of the Boys and Girls Club. So a lot of the other programs take care of the Toys for Tots for the younger kids. It's the teenagers that really
kind of get
struggle.
Shafted.
Yeah.
So you are definitely a big part of this community, and I see it, with the other owners. And you also have kind of taken on a role as parking enforcer.
I would like to call it the motorcycle maiden. Yes, yes.
So that's, for our listeners, there happens to be a loading area in front of...
Clearly marked,
but the stripes somehow appear to motorcyclists as motorcycle parking spots, which it is not. But I know that's one of your personal pet peeves. Have there ever been any other kind of road bumps along the way that...
any little challenge I've had, honestly, I've fired off an email to a few different people in the town, and they've been unbelievably responsive. Actually, embarrassingly responsive. One night I was frustrated about parking in the back.
Yep.
And it was in the fire lane, and I emailed just from the contact page of the Plymouth fire department, emailed the chief and a few other people, and the chief emailed me back at 11:30 at night.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my god.
You saw that already?
Yeah, I thought this was a general email that his secretary would see and be like, hey, some crazy lady is complaining about
right.
He was right on it and said, I'll be out tomorrow morning. And I was like, oh, okay.
Well, that's great. I mean, it's so good to get responses quickly,
Yeah, I know that there's this underlying, it's hard to do business in Plymouth or, town hall. I'm not going to say that I've had some wonderful moments in some of the departments. I've definitely had the I need to take a deep breath and walk out moment.
Yeah.
In one particular department, but in general...
What department was that?
building. But in general,
yeah,
everyone's been awesome. They really have.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So, being an entrepreneur, if someone was considering starting a business, what would be your kind of sage advice that you would kind of pass along?
Hustle hard, don't sleep, and you got to eat it, live it, breathe it.
I always feel like people have no idea how much work it goes into.
Yeah, I mean, I love what I do, and I don't think of it as work. I think of it as a part of me and what I want to do. Mm-hmm. For example, last night I spent 4 hours after a 14-hour day looking at wine and different reviews for different wines and what's going to make the most sense with our wine program and what our consumers want. First thing this morning, 5 o'clock this morning, I'm up looking at Instagram to see what new beers have come out, what's going on in the industry. It is all consuming. There's no day off.
And I think that is the biggest key is you can't start a business going, I'm going to make a ton of money at doing this.
Oh yeah, it's like a poverty sentence for the first few years. Yeah. And then you have to keep in mind there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. But, I just kind of mean that you can't go, I'm trying to think of an example, but
Well,
I'm going to open a brewery because that's going to make a lot of money. It's going to be
cool. Yeah, my favorite
is... You have to kind of be like, I love beer.
Yeah, my favorite is the kid who came in who was like, I can't wait to own my own business because then I can make my own hours and just write my own paychecks.
Yeah.
And in my head, I was like, you mean all the hours are your own hours?
Right, exactly.
And the paycheck is what's left after everything else, what you think that you might be able to squeak out of your account. Yes, then yes, you can do those things.
You can do those things, but yeah, it's just like I've known a lot of people who've kind of talked about it, and it's just
there is no talk, you just do.
Yeah, that's very much, but it's just kind of like I don't think they have any realization of.
No.
If you struggle at a 40-hour work week, forget it.
Yes.
And it's got to be a love.
It has to be. There's never a day I walk in the door and I'm like, oh, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
It's part of, it's like having a kid, really. This is my baby.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get to say like, oh, I need a day off from my child. No, even if you're away from your child, you're still checking in. You want to know what's going on.
Do you check in more with the beer cellar or your actual child?
The beer cellar. My actual child, he's 15.
He's borderline adultish.
Yeah. Yeah. Although, I have cameras here that I can view remotely.
Yeah.
Amazing. I kind of wish I had those at home so I could view my son remotely to see what he was doing.
They have those.
I know they have those, but then I struggle with that whole, invasion of privacy, da-da-da-da-da.
I bought one for my girlfriend because she was stressing out.
Wait.
No, hang on.
Okay.
Hang on. So, because she was stressing out about not being able to be home with her dogs as much.
Oh, yeah. So she could see the dogs.
Yes, she could see the dogs, and it's got a mic so she can speak to the dogs.
Oh, I've seen that. If I couldn't bring Cooper, I'd totally have one.
So, I'm like, this would be great. So I'll be sitting on the couch, and I'll just get a text, oh, you're just watching TV? And I'd be like, all right, don't do that.
Yeah, see, I'll send a, hey, if it's slow, you know what you might want to do. Just, if it's slow, this cardboard does need to get cut. If it
happens to be slow,
Right.
But your staff here has been really, really good to
They're
us.
awesome. We're so lucky to have them.
Yeah.
We really are.
We ran into Sheila at the Food and Wine Expo.
Oh, cool. Yeah, she's a hot ticket.
Yeah. And I know Hans is talking about working on a brewery as well.
Yeah, they're opening a brewery as well, down the road.
And you are also working on a brewery.
I'm not. Tom is.
Oh, Tom is.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm the behind the scenes cheerleader.
Yeah. Okay.
Totally Tom's gig. I'm just the one who wakes him up and says, "I have this great idea for a beer you should brew. Make it happen. I don't know how to brew. Yeah. This sounds awesome.
Make it a thing."
Yeah, make that. I sent him a text message today. I'm like, such and such oranges. Can't tell you. It's a trade secret.
That's fine.
I'm like, this needs to happen. He's like, okay. So that's my job.
Yeah.
Is just to say, hey you, make this happen.
Do you think that's do you see a bursting of the craft beer bubble anytime soon, or do you think it's gonna be something like that, or
there's been so much talk about it. I think yes and no. I think no, there will not be a burst in terms of the micro and nano breweries who are in it for the love.
What's a nano brewery?
You're looking at 1 barrel, 2 barrel, really
small,
super small. That are in it for the love of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there will be a burst in terms of they're just going to have no customers. Everyone's reverted back to drinking Bud. I don't think that that's going to happen. What I do think is going to be a little bit of a burst is going to be consumer driven. Consumers are so now keyed into, I want the brand new beer that's the fresh as it can be. If it's 4 days old, I could have had it 2 days ago and it would have been better. Or, geez, that new beer last week, I already had it and I liked it. I don't want to have it again. So I think the consumers need to understand that their buying patterns are going to dictate that some of these breweries just can't sustain. They're not
going to be able to get it to market that quick.
Right, and there can't be a new beer every single day.
Right.
The perfect 6-pack, if I had a diagram, it would be 2 beers you've never had, 2 beers you haven't had in a really long time, and 2 beers you love. Not every 6-pack has to be 6 beers that you've never had before.
Yeah.
I
usually pick a couple that I haven't had, and I usually pick a few. And
that's why you're great. You're a perfect consumer.
I'm pretty awesome, and I wish you would tell Angela that. Because she doesn't seem to think
awesome.
so.
Yeah, I think that is going to be like your established breweries where people are like, I've already had that.
Yeah.
Well, good. They're great. Don't stop having that. You can't keep chasing, it's almost like chasing the high. Like, oh, I had this one great beer yesterday from this brewery. There's got to be a better one today from another brewery.
Right, and to me, it's like if you have a great beer, like, does it matter that you have it more than once? To me, like, that's the point.
Yeah,
Find a great beer and have it again.
I've spoken about this before in other like educational formats and stuff. Like, if we shop for our beer like we shop for produce, to be like, broccoli. I've already had broccoli. Can't have broccoli again. I had it once in my life. There's beers you can have more than once. It's a thing.
Yeah. What's your least favorite beer? Like, is there a beer that you...
To be honest with you, my least favorite style is sour beers.
Yeah.
I can appreciate the process. It's an art form of how they're made. Deep down inside, I'm a bio girl, so I love the, all the microbes and the natural flora and how the wind temperature and change and influences the beer. At the nurse part of me, if it smells like a procedure I've done, I can't drink it. So...
Okay.
Like that really like sour, lactic. I'm like, oh, that is not a good smell. You have an issue. Yeah. I can't get past that and the nose of a sour.
I can't say I've drank many sours.
So as a nurse, there's like, you have regular vomit and then you have like bile vomit. And when you're vomiting bile, that's like a stat issue.
Yeah.
That's what sours nose-wise. I'm like, oh, triage. Something's wrong here. Mentally, I get what it is and I understand it, and I always try them. I will always try everything.
So what is it in a sour that gives it that kind of...
It's really, depending on, it's the pediococcus or the lacto. They're natural occurring bacteria, and it's the way it's fermented. A lot of them are open, coolship fermented. So in traditional brewing, I don't know if I have a map around here, but they're in a closed container, and your yeast, and you're controlling everything in there. And open fermentation, which a lot of the, you'll say wild sours. Yeah. It's a coolship, so it's really like the wind. Whatever's naturally occurring, you're going to get natural bugs in that beer.
And that's safe? It doesn't sound
it's safe. I mean, when I say bugs, I don't mean like creepy crawly. Yeah. I mean like microscopic creepy crawly. It's safe, absolutely. But it definitely, if you and I set up a coolship here, and we set up one at P-Town, the different air and the
so even
wind
if we
streams.
use the exact same recipe, they still won't be the same beer.
Exactly.
Huh. Yeah. That's interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah. So it's, pollen, everything influences it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I geek out on it, but I can appreciate it. Like, there's a brewery, Cantillon, that's people go crazy for their sours. You can generally only get them in Europe. Tom travels a lot. He brings them back, and if we have one bottle and there's a bunch of people who are dying to try it, I'm going to pass because I don't appreciate it.
Right, yeah. That makes sense. So the way that the store is set up, you can buy a 6-pack or you can make a 6-pack.
Correct.
And it's broken down mostly by region.
Yes.
Is there one region, like, we're all East Coasters, do we tend to go East Coast? You
all stay East Coast, yeah. East Coast, definitely. I just did a really, because I'm a nerd, as I mentioned, a really nice pie chart of like where the percentage of, volume is. Definitely East Coast. A little bit of the No Coast, and as it travels down the wall, we as New Englanders aren't crazy in love with the West Coast IPAs. Yeah. So it's funny to watch West Coast IPAs starting to morph a little bit towards New England. They're getting a little more hazy, a little more juicy. So it's an interesting progression to see how what we call New England style IPA isn't actually officially a style. Yeah. It's something that we're doing that maybe one day will be a recognized style by...
It's just slightly different than...
Right.
Yeah.
So the West Coast tends to be a little more piney, a little dry, have that resiny, whereas the East Coast now is very much, unfiltered, citrusy.
See, that's what I don't. Yeah. Not the citrusy thing, doesn't.
Well, when people say to me, like, I don't like beer, I always have to scratch my head at that, because I'm like, have you tried every beer out there? Because there's a lot of different styles of beer.
I don't think they have, because I'm trying, and I'm not doing a very good job of trying every single beer. I don't get very far.
Well, you should work harder at that.
So, the So you have it broke down by East, No Coast, and West Coast.
Yeah, and then you
have imports.
Yeah, international sour ciders, and then in the back, the coolers are cold by style.
Is there like one particular import that is really sought after?
Well, I think, in general, German beers definitely have a more of a draw to them. It's a really nice beer where some of it is, a Pilsner or a lager. I can pull that Budweiser drinker in and say, hey, I'm not going to start you a double IPA.
Right.
Let's start here. Belgian beers, it's always a really well-selling, and people are always looking for Belgian beers.
I was actually in Germany, and we took part of a tour specifically because it was, quote-unquote, touring a German brewery, and it went to, like, a brew house, like a restaurant that brews their own beer. Yeah. So that's a little unfortunate.
That's a little scammy.
So, Tom's not here, but when is that brewery looking at opening?
I think he's hoping for June.
Yeah.
It's a very long... It's not a matter of, like, hey, we really want to open today. It's a very long... It's a very long permitting process. Federal. Goes through federal first.
Yeah.
That's 6 months. We received it back. Then it goes to state. State can take up to 4 months. Then from state, it has to go to town for a pouring license. Mm-hmm. So there's all those things, and each one of those...
the pouring allows you to sample.
Oh, it allows us to sell pints as well.
Oh, really? Oh,
so
okay.
It is a very lengthy process, and I don't know if you know this or not, but our government isn't actually all that efficient. I don't know if you heard anything about that.
I'm very aware of that.
So it's not like the federal permit is the same for the state. Like you could say, okay, here's my information, just no.
Yeah, it's not even like, well, I got my federal.
Right,
Yeah.
It's a whole separate set. Each require what's called a brewer's bond, so you have to have an insurance agent, get a bond, blah, 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 blah. So it's a very lengthy process.
Yeah.
So we're hoping June.
And then, of course, each... form you submit usually has a fee attached to it.
Yes. Like
always...
if you think, I'm going to open a brewery and I'm going to make a ton of money, you should probably get better at math.
Yeah.
Math 101. Because eventually, yes, you will maybe break even, and then one day you'll make money. But, even a small system, very small, you're talking 60, 70, 80, 90, 100,000.
And it's math heavy. Doing
Yes.
stuff like that.
Yes.
I was talking with Brenton at Dirty Water. And, I'm not the smartest guy, but I'm not an idiot. And we start talking. He's talking about the process, and I'm like, holy shit, he is way smarter than I am.
So I have a theory. And
okay.
I think that there needed to be a Montessori high school based on alcohol. Just hear me out.
All right. I think I was to that high school.
I think my liver went to that high school. But if they had taught me chemistry in terms of brewing, I would have totally...
Every kid would have paid attention.
I totally would have paid attention. If they taught me physics in terms of how do I move a keg down a flight of stairs into a keg cooler to move it back up a flight of stairs 2 days later to a customer.
Yeah.
Physics, I would have killed it.
Yeah.
Knocked it out of the park. Math, the same thing. Like if X, costs you X amount to make this keg... Mm-hmm. What do you... All these things, I would have been an honor roll student.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's more just even a practical use of knowledge. Like, we teach our kids how to take a test. Mm-hmm. And then to apply that knowledge in any useful way, be it alcohol or any other way, isn't really taught.
No, and it's interesting because I always said, I'll never use algebra.
Yeah.
And I do use algebra. When we have people who call and they say, I have 100 people... and I want to do a beer tasting with them at 3-ounce samples, how many beers do I need?
Right.
I have a formula now. Like, I have this chemistry teacher who taught me this, like, this, da-da-da-da. I use that formula now to figure out how many beers do you need for that party?
Yeah. And how many beers would that be?
Oh, I'm going to bust a calculator. But, yeah, real life stuff.
So do you get a lot of people calling to do samplings like that, or...
In the spring and the summer we do. Yeah, bachelor parties, bachelorette parties.
So they kind of run their own tasting?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I never thought of that.
Yeah, so as long as it's at a private residence.
Yeah.
There's some legal stuff, of course, because it's the government.
Yeah.
We can't just, show up at...
I'll leave it on your doorstep.
Yeah, I'll leave it here and have at it. or if it's something that's public,
Yeah.
we have to get a 1-day permit and go through the Board of Selectmen, etc.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's cool. Or you have you worked? I know you've worked with them, but you've worked with businesses, the restaurants,
Right.
So that's like a sharing their kind of.
When we work with the restaurants, the law is, and we're pretty strict about following it because I'd like to keep my liquor license.
Of course,
it's like that's part of the baby. I'd like to keep the baby alive.
Well, as far as the liquor store, that's kind of the baby's brain.
Right, exactly. Like without
that's
that,
the most important thing.
So when we do events at either on the boats or at other restaurants, it's their alcohol that we're providing the education on. We don't bring anything in.
Oh, so it's similar to like, and I'm sorry to compare you, but like when the Bud Light girls show up at the sports bar, that they buy the liquor from the restaurant.
Correct.
To promote it, that kind of
right. Right, except we're not as cute, but we do know a lot more.
I know we've had this conversation, but I find it interesting, so I'm going to bring it up again. Have you ever found that being female causes problems when it comes to beer recommendations?
It doesn't cause problems for me because I laugh in my head so much. But yes, it definitely... And it's funny because I sometimes see it more from women than men.
Really?
Yeah, there's always like those few little comments that stick out to you. We had a husband and wife. They're probably in their 50s. They came in, and she said, "Oh, I could tell it's your husband's store." And I said, "Oh, how's that?" And she said, "Oh, because there's such little wine and so much beer." And I was like, "Well, actually, I'm the buyer. I drink beer. He drinks beer as well, but he knows more about wine than I ever will."
Yeah.
And certainly Tom is very good. If I say, "Can I help you?" and they say no, and they'll look at him and ask him a question, he'll say, "Well, I think that she has more experience in that." Or,
yeah. I found that very much working at Home Depot. That, first of all, the fact that I worked there was kind of crazy because I don't use tools. But they'd walk by, like, the girl working in flooring to ask me a question, and then I'd be like, I don't know, and I'd just take them back to,
right.
The person.
And it's not often, but it definitely, I get people come in like, "So you really drink beer?" Like, no, I gave up my 401k and my, my corporate job just to hang out in a beer store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone told me I get to write my own check.
Yeah,
Make my own hours.
Make my own hours. I'm in.
Yeah. Has there been any moment, like really noteworthy, insane moment, crazy happening in your store?
Not so much in the store. I think that...
Well, you had the clown infestation.
Well, we did have the clowns. Luckily, they didn't come in this year, but last year, that was a creepy night.
Yeah. So do they run that every year?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So last year, I didn't know about it.
I didn't know about it this year.
So last year, I was working alone, and a big bus comes, and all of a sudden, I'm on the phone with my mom.
I feel like they should be a very small car, not a big bus.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm on the phone with my mom. They pull in the loading zone, and all these clowns start piling out of like this small school bus.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my god, I think I'm getting killed. What is going on? Like, this can't be real. So, that's happened. We did have a guy come in and crash the doors and tell us about how we were selling the devil's juice.
Really?
And, oh yeah, he was
that sounds like
proselytizing
fun.
to us.
Ah.
And Angela, my amazing assistant manager, who is like Molly Sunshine. We do have a beer that's made with holy water, so she recommended that to him.
Really?
Yeah, it's called Scary Jesus Rockstar.
Ah.
Yeah, it's actually very good.
So you don't recommend it to vampires?
No.
Okay.
No. Might put holes in them. It's ugly. Why waste the beer?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I can
It
see
might
that.
just fall right out of them. No, you know what? I think, thank God Tom is as calm and...
He seems very even-keeled.
Even-keeled and silently supportive. Because I tend to yeah, we'll do that. Sure, absolutely. We did a craft beer 6-course dinner with a live band after only being open for 5 months. We did it on the Pilgrim Belt.
Oh, okay.
So we're on a boat with a chef, 6-course meal, a band, doing a beer pairing. I'm running up and down the stairs everyone was happy.
Did you ever have that moment where you're like, what am I doing? Do I know what I'm doing?
Yeah, I had that oh my god, there's actually 100 people bought tickets. There's 100 people coming to this event.
Yeah.
And when I saw them starting to pile onto the boat, I was like, I really did this, huh? Like,
yeah. To me, that is a very, like, fun and weird moment.
Yeah.
Like, all together.
Yeah.
Kind of like, when you start to have people, like, refer to you as, like, well, you're the expert on this. And you're like, they're not being sarcastic.
Right.
They mean that.
Yeah, like we do long table dinners with Steve Hall from Hophead Events, which you know Steve.
Yep.
And our first long table dinner, we had like this, oh my gosh, the dinner starts in like 3 hours. Where are the linen napkins? The company we ordered from was late in delivering them, and we had to iron them a certain way to get fake hops in them. So I had like an assembly line down here of like 3 irons, people ironing, putting the hops in, like literally people are pouring into this long table dinner and I don't have napkins in. I'm calling the store like, are the napkins done? So sometimes we tend to say yes and then figure out the details.
I don't know what that's like.
And knock on wood.
This fish is staring at me.
Yeah, it's definitely worked for us, and I think that we're willing to take risks that maybe other people don't in terms of events. A lot of people will say, like, well, what's in it for you? Because, for example, when we do the beer and oyster class or this and that, we don't necessarily make cash off of that revenue.
Yeah.
But that's not important to me. What's important is getting the name out, building rapport, establishing ourselves in the community.
I think that's really what makes the good entrepreneur is the person who's like, oh, that sounds like fun. Let's do that.
Yeah. Why not? Right? Like, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I have some very pragmatic friends who own businesses, who have owned businesses for a long time, including maybe my accountant, who's like, so wait.
Yeah, but I feel like accountants...
You're paying money to send a staff to do X, Y, and Z, and you're not making any money? I'm like, well, the money that I'm making is intangible because it's actually direct marketing.
It's marketing. Yeah, it's
right.
You don't see the return on it immediately.
Exactly, and I know that going in. Like, I look at, I'm spending X amount of money for this advertising. The advertising is in the form of us. Yep. But yes, that's what it is.
And I'm going to ask this question, and I feel like I already know the answer because it's happened to me, and you're way more public. Do you get recognized frequently around town?
Yes.
Okay.
So
are you from Plymouth? Do you live in Plymouth?
I live in Plymouth now. Okay. I'm originally from the Cape. I will be honest, I drive my son to school every day in my pajamas. Yep. Which I was like, who cares? It's 6:40 in the morning. I now get waves, and because I have Craft Beer Cellar on the car, I'm like, oh, I should probably like get my act together. Like,
at least a little. Yeah,
at least like literally, I'm in like fluffy, like they have like clouds on them, slippers. Yeah, I'm like, I should probably do something about that. Yeah. And there's been a few times where I'm like, I'm just going to run in the grocery store real quick at 7 in the morning. I'm in my PJs. Nobody wants... Yeah, and it's like, oh, all the firefighters who are our regulars are starting their shift and picking up their food. I'm like, oh, hi, guys.
Yeah. It's always interesting. And to me, it always seems to catch me off guard and, like, those moments you wouldn't expect. We were at... my friend has a shop down the street, and we were watching the Thanksgiving Day Parade. And someone, like, I was sitting there with my kids, and we're kind of having a conversation. Someone's like, oh, excuse me, I just wanted to say I'm a really big fan. And I was like, oh, sure, okay.
So I can give you my, like, real-life story. So my son, I think you've met him. He's a lovely little cherub. No, he's usually around here. He's a good kid. He's 15. Good kid. However, we had to go to the school for a little behavioral incident. And I had to have a meeting.
15. It happens.
With the assistant principal.
Except for Liam. Liam's not allowed to have those. He listens.
Ah, there you go. So the assistant principal, fantastic guy. As I'm leaving, my son goes to leave. He's like, hey, by the way, love your store. I'm like, all right, well, and awkward.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to go home and kill him now.
Yeah, I go like, that's super. Like, I just want to be anonymous sometimes. Yeah. And they're like, oh, you're that girl. I'm like, yeah, my kid's an idiot today. I'm sorry.
How does your son feel about the store? Does he look at it like, oh, is somebody going to take over the reins?
No.
Or
it's funny.
Not interested at all?
I've brought him up in a very European philosophy of beer's not taboo, alcohol's not taboo. Mm-hmm. It pairs with meals. He's 15. He's never seen me intoxicated. Yeah. Just hasn't happened. I don't drink that way. I drink because I respect it. I love the taste. So he's grown up with that, which is another funny story. But anyway, so he doesn't. It's not like cool to him. Yeah. So he sat me down this summer. He's like, Mom, I have something I have to tell you. I think you're gonna need to sit down. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
shit.
What's about to happen? I just want to let you know that I've thought about it and I don't want to take over the family business. I just don't see beer as my future.
Wow.
Okay.
But,
So,
like, what? That's, like, a really kind of mature...
Yeah, he just, he gets it, and he'll help, like, break down boxes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He's allowed to, at home, on holidays or whatever, take a sip of this. What do you think? I've asked him, like, do you want a sip of this? He's like, nah, I'm good. Yeah. He's, just not interested whatsoever.
My whole childhood growing up, it was like Thanksgiving. Oh, you could have, much like a tasting.
Right.
Yeah, you can have, this is wine. You're like, wine.
This Thanksgiving he had a little bit of some wine. And he's like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
He's just never really, I hope it continues. I tell him when he gets to college, I will send him money for drinking money if he's buying craft beer and drinking responsibly. But I will not send him money to buy crap beer and overdrink. So
that's interesting. So that's an interesting dynamic. Does he know what he wants to do?
He has no idea. We just had this conversation again tonight because I was like, so, hey, sophomore, any idea what you want to do in life? He's no idea.
My son's a freshman. He knows where he wants to go to school, doesn't know what for.
Well, he's one step ahead of mine. Who has, like, la-di-da, wherever the wind blows me, I'll go, But the funny story about the alcohol is my son was going to a private Christian school, 2nd grade. And at that time, a lot of our friends brewed, and Wyatt was always around that. And he's had wort before, so it's before it's, has alcohol, etc. Mm-hmm. So the soccer coach says to all of them, if you guys drink or do drugs, you can't play on this team. My kid's like, but my mom lets me drink all the time.
Oh, jeez.
So the school didn't think it was funny or understand that, so I actually got called in.
Yeah.
And they told me that if they heard any further reports, that they would have to report me.
Yeah.
And I explained, like, the whole brewing process. I came with, like, diagrams of, like, where alcohol occurs and,
prior to this, there's no alcohol.
Yeah, they weren't buying it at all. They just weren't thrilled.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice. So what other events do you have coming up?
Oh my gosh, so many events.
This is going to be going up in March. You don't have a planner?
Listen.
Just delete this, because I can't even talk to her.
March.
How do you keep it straight?
I have her.
I can't keep anything straight. People
She's having much better help than you do.
People make fun of me. They're like, oh, where's the little black book? I'm like, oh shit, I forgot my calendar. I don't know what's going on.
I have a few, but not my own personal. Like I have one for the store. Blah, blah, blah. But March. We haven't booked too much in March yet. February, we have a lot going on. We have a private event with the Rotary Club at New World Tavern.
Nice.
It's a beer and pizza pairing.
Ooh. Oh, I saw that. That went up. I saw that just the other day.
Yeah. So we have that on a Wednesday. The Thursday, we have a blind tasting.
Now, what is that?
So the blind tasting is...
I feel like that's a Pepsi challenge.
Yeah, kind of. Well, the blind tasting is, again, at New World.
Yeah.
Where you have 5 beers that are given to you in samples, and you have a list of what they could be, and you have to put them in the order of what they are on the list.
Is there a prize?
There is. Oh. So it's $10 to come into the blind tasting.
Yeah.
If you get all 5 right, you get a $25 gift card.
Oh, that's cool.
So not only are you getting a flight for $10, but you're also having an opportunity to win $25 and hang out with us. I mean, how cool is that?
And when is that?
That is next Thursday.
I know our listeners won't be able to go, but I might be able to.
And then that Saturday we have that beer and oyster pairing. And then we have a beer 101 class in February. We have a lot going on. Oh, we have a beer and chocolate pairing on February 11th.
And who's the chocolate?
We're going to have several different... We're going to have a chocolate fountain,
yeah,
Guilty Baking, and Deb's Candy Creations.
Oh, you should... I don't know Deb's Candy Creations, but I was going to say there's a one out of Middleborough that was at the Food Expo that was amazing.
Oh, bring them all.
We're going to try and get them on the podcast.
Yeah, so we do... it's a beer and chocolate fest in here. It's a busy day.
Yeah. I'll have to let Nancy know.
Yeah.
Because she'll be down for that. So you have Beer 101. How often do you run that?
We run that like every 4 months.
Yeah. And if people wanted info about what events are coming up?
Facebook.
Facebook?
Yeah, Facebook's the best way to do that. And then a lot of our events are free.
Yeah.
So there's you have to go to Eventbrite just to reserve because this classroom only holds so many people.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of them are paid events.
And so it's on Facebook, but they have to make sure they're at the Plymouth
Correct.
Craft Beer Cellar.
Correct.
And on Twitter, it's at CBC Plymouth.
Yes.
So if you're looking on Facebook, make sure it's the Plymouth one.
Right.
Not the one that got run over by a car.
Correct.
Braintree?
Braintree, yes.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Horrible.
That is horrible, but I think that they're up and running and didn't have too many issues.
Oh,
so.
good. Because it was like right around the holidays, I think.
Yeah, right before the holidays. Tough time.
Yeah. And so we talked prior. This is kind of a slow time for you. And
it's funny. It's slow in terms of people. They're doing their like blah blah blah. I'm not drinking. I'm going to get in shape. Resolution.
Is that what slows it down?
Yeah, it's funny because statistically they're only going to do that for 21 days, and it was so funny. The 22nd we were so busy in here. But anyway,
that's funny.
We're slow in terms of that, but we really use the time to plan events. Like we're already planning beer dinners for June right now. Nice. We're booking caterers. We're securing venues.
Are you working with Steve on the...
Yeah, Steve and I work together. We kind of bounce ideas off each other about 700 times a day.
Because they just announced that...
the Craft Beer Cruise.
Craft Beer Cruise.
That's us, yep.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep, so, this is really... Angela will sometimes ask, how do we have 4 events in one day? It's because in January, when I'm sitting here thinking, okay, what's March, April, May... It's like, oh yeah, let's do all those things. Yes, we'll do all those.
Yeah. See, I'm very much the same ilk. I'm like, yeah, let's do that. We can do that.
We can do that. We can totally do that.
And then you're like, on the day, you're like, what was I thinking?
Yes.
Right.
But January, February are really good planning times for events, and we did a ton of events last year. I can guarantee that we're going to double that this year.
Nice.
No.
Because who needs sleep?
Totally overrated.
It's like, if you get more than 10 minutes, you're just being lazy.
Slacker.
I know, right?
Total slacker.
So you never really answered the question, what's your favorite beer?
Damn it. I did oyster stout.
But that's like any oyster
stout? Well, right now I really love the 21st Amendment oyster stout. Mm-hmm. Last year's I liked. This year's I loved. They changed the brew process a little bit. You want my nerd part? Here's the nerd part.
Okay.
Last year they were just using the shells. This year they used the whole body. And the salinity that's in the body of the beer this year is by far... I did a vertical, 1-to-1. Amazing.
I just got into oysters like a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And, they're so good.
Love them.
So good.
Love them.
And I'm an oyster guy.
Yeah.
So that's an important thing to have.
Yeah, it is important. Actually, we did an oyster dinner out on an oyster flat.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we did it with a chef, local chef. We took people out on a boat, out to an oyster flat, had, pop-up kitchen. There's another one of those.
Yeah.
It was the chef's concept. He called and said, hey, I'm doing this dinner on an oyster flat. When the tide drops, we have to go out before it drops so we can set up. Are you cool with that? I was like, yeah, we're cool with that. So legitimately, like, wading through the water to set up a kitchen and serve people beer and wine, and then the tide comes in, it's like your cooler's floating away,
oh my God,
trying to grab
crazy.
it to get on the boat. Like, yeah, we'll do that. Of course, sure.
So what has been, like, the most fun you've had at one of these events? Like, what's one stands out the most? Because that sounds insane. Yeah,
that dinner, that was pretty amazing. Yeah. I think that was probably one of my favorite events. The long table dinners, I love.
No, those are the ones down here on...
Hedge House Lawn.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was not going to pull that name.
Yeah, I like those for a few reasons. It brings the classiness visually to what beer deserves. People think, oh, beer, it's going to be a keg party. And that's originally what they were like, so you're going to have a keg party? No, you have to explain. So people...
Which is odd, because I've been to the Thirsty Pilgrim a couple of times. Not keg party, but not far off.
Right. So when people walk by from the outside, they've asked, like, is there a wedding going on?
Yeah.
It's a very classy setting, but I love the format of the long tables where you're sitting next to someone you don't know. By the end of the night, you're having conversation with them.
Yeah.
I think we missed the boat in a lot of American bars and cultures of not talking to people sitting next to us at a bar and staring at a TV screen. So, Steve and
or
I...
our phone screen.
Right. So
Yeah.
Steve and I definitely agreed with that and said, we want to do a community-based... Our whole mission, and Steve and I, and he's like my perfect partner in that, is social community experiences.
Oh, that's cool.
Is really bringing people together to build the community, but to bring this other aspect to it.
Yeah. That's very cool.
Yeah, I love it. And we've had some great breweries. We've had some awesome brewers that literally threw gloves on and helped plate food. I mean, it's a good time for everyone.
Nice. And is that information also on the Facebook? Or
it will be up soon. We are confirming dates and, which chef. We're going to use a different chef for each one.
Oh, nice. All local guys?
We try to use mostly local. Yeah. Everything that we do, we really try to do local. I mean, it's one thing to say shop local. It's another to understand, how it impacts your friend next door who owns a restaurant.
Yeah.
Well,
we had the... I did one of the lobsters, and
yes.
So friends of mine are like, let's do a lobster crawl instead. So go from bar to bar and stop at all the lobsters we can. And so somehow I became the traffic director that day. So I'm like, we'll start at Luciosa's, and let's go to Nosh, and Tatum said we do a beer tasting at the beer cellar. Let's go there. Let's go to the New World. And they're like, you're just going to your friends' bars, and I'm like, yeah, where else would I go?
Where would you go?
Why would I go anywhere else?
Yeah.
So it's to me it's that kind of community that.
Yeah, it definitely is. From the day that we, found the building to starting construction, people were just pouring in. It's funny. We have a new restaurant moving in, which we can't disclose apparently the name, next to us, and to Percy's.
Percy's is going away?
They are. New restaurants coming in.
They only tried to burn the place down 3 times.
5, I think? 5, I don't know. But there's been a, you say all the bar owners and restaurant owners were friends. We've all had, a meeting, so who's going to let them know how we play around here? Who's going to let them know we're all friends and they need to play in the sandbox? Yeah. And,
Nice.
So it'll be interesting.
You have to show up and bring a plate of cookies or something.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I'm already, I saw a contractor there today, and I was like, do you want beer? Who wants beer?
I know you're going home. You want beer.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. So, all right. Well, I think we've taken up enough of your time, Tatum. Thank you for...
thank you, guys. I appreciate all the art for our walls.
You always come down here and record. And
yeah, absolutely.
Get in your way. So
not in my way. You're in the basement.
Yeah, well, we try not to be in the way. But it was a pleasure, and for any of our listeners, make sure you stop by the Craft Beer Cellar if you get down to Plymouth. Since this is going up in March 18th and 19th, we will be having our spring art show at the Dirty Water Distillery. It's going to be 2 days this time around.
Because why wouldn't it be?
Right, because why do I need a day off? Last time, I think we had 20-some-odd artists submit pieces and 30 works. We gave out $350 in prize money. Anyone is welcome to enter. Our youngest submission? I don't know what you call it. Person to submit artist. Was artist. Yeah, that's a good word for it. Was 12.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
And she came in second in the People's Choice.
Really?
Yes.
Good for her.
So anybody's welcome. Stay along those Plymouth lines. It's a very open, non-snobby situation to be in. Plus, if you're around, you can come down and sample some of the Dirty Water Distillery booze. I think that's it. Thank you, Tatum.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thanks.